where's Waldo? Scholars who study the topography of the Mesopotamian alluvial plain do primarily belong to one of the following fields: geology, archaeology and philology. This is what geologists are confronted with, the Iraqi desert. Not very stimulating for the young scientist who is sent to Iraq. He can do marvelous field work and reconstruct, as in the EAP, for instance, the ancient fluvial system, but he lacks any precise historical framework. Archaeologists reach astonishing results, mainly based on tons of ceramics from Mesopotamian archaeological sites. They integrate other scientific fields such as archaeozoology or paleobotany and build models for ancient societies or economies. But even with the newest techniques, no historical topography is possible. Philologists, however, exploit textual sources, and with some luck, these sources contain information on where, why, or when an event took place. At least questions such as where's Waldo on the campsite, in the train station, at the beach, can be asked. By combining the poor data from geology, archaeology and philology, it becomes clear that Waldo has to be looked for at the beach, with hundreds of people, some drinking soft drinks out of beakers, others eating snacks or wearing bikinis. I show you these slides out of frustration, and now I come back to Kathleen's talk. Where's Waldo is a children's game, but I, an old man, never succeeded in spotting Waldo. I felt the same when I tried to locate the famous dam of Abiesho. I soon realized that I didn't have any reliable geomorphological nor archaeological data, and that my research would be limited to the traditional philological information, almost without any link to the field, in casu, the Iraqi alluvial plain. If we are willing to do topographical research in the Mesopotamian alluvial plain, south of Baghdad, we have no choice. Interdisciplinary collaboration is fundamental for identifying ancient watercourses, settlements, towns, etc. Such an interdisciplinary research project has been set up in the past thanks to the Inter-University Attraction Poles program, which is sponsoring this conference. Scientists from various disciplines belonging to diverse Belgian universities and scientific institutions have collaborated within this program, resulting in the best overall study of river changes in the Sipa region, edited by Tenre and Herman Gasch, under the name Changing Watercourses in Mesopotamia. Also, an excellent reconstruction of the geomorphology of the same region has been published by Bateman and Hivert in 2004 within the same IIP project. The Sipa region thus is by far the best studied area for Babylonia. But what if one has to go further southwards? What if one is confronted with cuneiform tablets that refer to new, unidentified towns and canals? That's what this talk is all about. For almost all of the information for the Nippur region, the region we are confronted with, we have to turn to the Americans. Macquarie Gibson and his group have done some research in the Nippur and Kish region. Elizabeth Stone did the same in the neighborhood of Mashkan Shapir. But all this is very, very limited in scope. Iraq has been surveyed in an excellent way by Bob Adams in the 60s and 70s. His books are perfect tools, but they are hard to use without more detailed geomorphological research in the field. 1,039 sites and channels were mapped and described in Adams' catalogue of this book, Heartland of Cities, and he has 3 books. That's primarily what the poor philologist uses when sitting at his desk somewhere in Europe. A new tool are the satellite images of looted sites in Iraq. Combined with Adam's survey data, they may at least give some information on the provenance of the used archives. So now I come back to the topic of this talk. What is Abi Yeshu's dam and why did he build it? In the 19th year of his reign, Abi Yeshu, the king, boasts that he dammed the Tigris. This was not an easy undertaking, as Kathleen already said, since the Tigris is, in contrast to the Euphrates, a fast-flowing river, in particular in spring. As far as I know, he is the only old Babylonian king who succeeded in damming the Tigris. This fact was so spectacular that the damming of the Tigris by Abi Yeshu was recalled in later times, in fact 1,000 years later, as a key event in his reign by an historiographical text and by an oracle inquiry. These texts were well known to Assyriologists, but were considered to belong to a legendary tradition, not referring to real events. Our work with Gabriella, who's my wife, and Kathleen, who was here before, on the 700 new texts stored at Cornell University has, however, changed our knowledge of the late Old Babylonian history dramatically, and we now have proof that Abi Yeshu did in fact build his dam on the Tigris. The aim of this talk will be to try to locate the famous dam and two fortresses which the king erected to protect the dam. We will try to do this with the limited data we have. These are mainly philological, with only a few geological and archaeological corrections. Now, these are some names to remember, or okay. So Hammurabi, everybody knows Hammurabi. His son Samsuiluna has been a successor, and this is important, as Kathleen already said. In the second half of his reign, there was suddenly chaos in Mesopotamia, in Babylonia, and the south. All of us thought that the south of Iraq was completely abandoned, and people moved to the north, to Sippar and Kish and Babylon, and the south was abandoned. So then comes Abi Yeshu, who built a dam on the Tigris, which was not an easy thing to do. Next to this dam on the Tigris, we will talk about the dam on the Tigris, but also about the Euphrates and a canal along the Euphrates called the Hammurabi-Nukush-Nishi Canal, which is 200 kilometers long or so and follows the Euphrates till the south of Iraq. Then Abi Yeshu has built two forts, one called Dur Abi Yeshu on the Hammurabi-Nukush-Nishi Canal, and another one built on the Tigris. So this first one is built at what is called a storage basin, at the storage basin of the canal, and the second is next to the dam. So I hope you can remember this. As I said before, for many years Assyriologists have been intrigued by the lack of archaeological features and of cuneiform tablets originating from central and southern Babylonia, starting in the later years of King Samsuiluna's reign. Dramatic events that happened during the reign of King Samsuiluna led to his loss of control over the entire region south of Nippur. So here you see this region from Marat also till the south is apparently completely, that's what we thought, was completely abandoned, and there are no traces, archaeological traces, nor cuneiform tablets coming from the area, starting with Samsuiluna's reign and going on till the end of the Old Babylonian dynasty, and then with the Kassites it changes. An unreliable supply of water was most probably one of the root causes of the decline of southern Mesopotamia. The canal Hammurabi-Nukush-Nishi was one of the major waterways of Babylonia and must have been over 200 kilometers long. It provided, according to Hammurabi, who had built the canal during his reign, perennial water for Nippur, so here, and then it goes on to Isin, Uruk, Larsa, Ur, and Eridu. This is in an inscription of Hammurabi where he claims that he provided water for these cities. This canal was vital for Babylonia. This canal, which was vital for Babylonia, had to be protected from the enemy of the Babylonian kings, the ruler of the sea land. And the ruler of the sea land lived here somewhere in between the green reeds or plants or whatever. Therefore, King Abieshuk hired mercenaries, and erected military forts along the canal, the Euphrates, and the Tigris. Where do the soldiers come from? A large group has ethnic diverse origins, for instance, Kassites, Gutians, and Sutians. Others come from faraway regions, such as Aleppo in the west, Subartu in the north, and Elam in the east. How astonishing this may be, more important for our topographical research in the alluvium are the references to Babylonian settlements or towns where most soldiers come from. These soldiers are said to come from Kish and Damrum, which is here somewhere, near Babylon, in the north, from Nippur and Isin, in the middle of Babylonia, and from Larsa in the south. Also Mashkan Shapir, from the Tigris, it's the only place on the Tigris, is often cited. This may be considered to be an indication that all of these cities, which had been of major political importance in the early Old Babylonian period, were not totally abandoned in the late Old Babylonian period, and that some small groups still lived there. Many military installations were built to protect the canal, and mercenaries populated these forts. These are shown on the slide. The majority of the forts are built next to the Euphrates. There is only one such fort on the Tigris, precisely at the site of Mashkan Shapir. It must have been of major importance. As already mentioned, Abieshuk built two fortresses by the name of Dur Abieshuk. I will come back on this. So there are two fortresses by the name of Dur Abieshuk. One is said to be on the Tigris, here somewhere. The other, one is said to be on the Tigris, the other on the canal Hammurabi Nukushnishi, somewhere on this canal. According to his year name, the one on the Tigris is built upstream of the dam, obviously to protect the dam. The other Dur Abieshuk was built in a storage basin of the canal Hammurabi Nukushnishi. How can we locate these fortresses? We have some information for the fortress on the canal Hammurabi Nukushnishi. We know from the text that it takes 3 to 4 days to travel from that fortress to Babylon. If traveled by boat, which is the usual way to do it, then this is upstream, and 10 to 15 kilometers per day is the maximum distance that can be covered. Dur Abieshuk on the canal Hammurabi Nukushnishi would be at approximately 40 to 60 kilometers to the south, in fact of Kish, not of Babylon, but of Kish. Our dossier informs us that workers travel from Babylon to the fortress on the storage basin of the canal Hammurabi Nukushnishi, somewhere there, to mix the waters with the river Euphrates. This may give us a clue. Geomorphological research points to a shift of one of the major channels of the Euphrates system in the later years of Samsuiluna, leading to the abandonment of the region to the south of Nippur because of a lack of a reliable water supply. Thus, water from the Tigris had become vital for the settlements of southern Babylonia. Therefore, the famous dam was constructed somewhere on the Tigris to raise the water's level in order to force it into a channel, into a takeoff. Exactly there the first fortress was built to protect the dam. The best place to divert the waters from the Tigris is at the inlet of a channel linking Tigris and Euphrates. The dam diverts the waters from the Tigris, and via a channel this water is mixed with the Euphrates waters. So here's the Euphrates, which is over this, and the Canal Hammurabi-Nukushnisi must be here somewhere. This mixing happened at the storage basin, which was protected by the second fortress by the name of Durabieshu. And now is an overview of everything. Oh no. Yeah, these are the two Durabieshus. It's just a proposition next to this canal, which might not be there. I think it must be. If one looks at the channel system or the fluvial system of in heartland of cities, there are many possibilities, and this is maybe too far to the south, but okay. Now, this is an overview, it's a little bit of everything together. Now I come to the end. What was the purpose of building the dam? Its purpose was twofold. First, a shift on one of the major channels of the Euphrates system at the time of Samsuiluna had led to an abandonment of major sites, and the southernmost regions had been faltering economically and politically. With his daring construction, Abieshuk tried to restore a more reliable water supply for the south. As can be seen on the slide, not one of the southern cities along the Tigris, which were important during the Ur-3 dynasty and the early Old Babylonian period, such as Adab, Umma, Girsu, Lagash, not one of these cities has fortified outposts, and we may conclude that they were abandoned in the late Old Babylonian times. I was most surprised that this was totally independently confirmed by the results of Bob Adams' survey, who remarked many years ago that the flow of the Adab-Umma channel entirely ceased in the later Old Babylonian period. So this is the Adab-Umma channel, and apparently people lived there just inside the ancient levees. And by the geomorphological research of Maggie Brandt and Jim Armstrong in the Nippon neighborhood, who wrote that there were no traces of any agriculture south and east of the heartland in the late Old Babylonian period, so in this area, in the same area. So this was the first aim of building a dam to provide water for the south. The second one is about the marshes in the south of Iraq. Abieshuk boasts that the dam was meant to defeat the Sealand enemy. The Sealand enemy lived there. The Sealand king lived in this area. By diverting the waters of the Tigris towards the Euphrates, he must have succeeded in drying up the marshes in the south of Iraq, the homeland of the Sealand king, and thus in starving its population. The strategy of drying up the marshes had several followers. The latest one was Saddam Hussein, who had a program to punish the Shiite tribes living in the marshes who had opposed his regime. He succeeded. This is the area that dried up after diverting the waters of the Tigris and the Euphrates by successfully digging canals. So he been digging canals much longer even than our canal Hammurabi-Nukushnisi, which is 200 kilometers. But this canal was about 500 kilometers or so. One was about 500 kilometers. Ironically, this plan was first suggested by an American engineer in 1953. So history repeats itself. Many of the marsh Arabs had to leave and had to resettle in the north. The project created an environmental and humanitarian disaster. 3,500 years earlier, the same humanitarian disaster would have happened when Abieshuk built his dam and people from the sealand had to move to the north of Babylonia. Without geomorphological research in the Mesopotamian alluvium, my observations remain extremely speculative, and other interpretations of the new 700 Cornell texts are as good as mine. I've been talking so much that I have lost track of Waldo. At the end of this paper, I come back to my initial, still unanswered question, where's Waldo?